Hello and welcome to Kernel Convos with Manini. It is World Mental Health Awareness Month, the color green. And today I decided to bring along a very beautiful clinical psychologist by the name of Asanda Madi. And what she's here to do is to give you advice and techniques on how to better manage your thoughts, your behavior, your emotions, and so many other things that might be difficult to deal with. And I hope that you enjoy it as much as I have. So Asanda, you do an incredible job on social media. I think you're one of the most influential therapists I know. And after following your page and seeing a few things there, I thought, what best to have you so that whatever I've learned, everyone can learn and more.
Thank you so much.
So can you tell us, who is the incredible Asanda Madi?
Well, my name is Asanda, as you've already said. I am Asanda Madi, and I'm a clinical psychologist, also a writer and a blogger. And recently, I've also added entrepreneur to the mix.
Okay. I did say incredible, right? So yeah, okay, that's great. So you wear 4 hats and more, maybe. I feel like you haven't mentioned a bit. There's stuff you haven't mentioned, but we'll get to that. So why this profession? Why a psychologist? Wow. Why psychologist? Why do you choose this line of profession?
I think it might sound cheesy, but I do think the profession called me.
Okay.
I think when you think about life and you think about the quality of life and wellness and well-being and all of it that we are all seeking for, just being the best people that we can be, I think psychology plays a huge role in that. You might find, like I always like making this analogy, you find 2 cars that can go the same distance, but one is on a tar road and one is on a gravel road. Okay. Both the cars would probably get to the destination, but one would get there more efficiently and just better than the one on the tar road. And I think that's how we are in life as well. A lot of us are on autopilot, a lot of us haven't processed a lot of the trauma we've been through. So we're honestly just going through life, not living the best way we can. Yeah. But I think psychology gives you that skill, that insight, to know that, okay, actually, these are my buttons, this is how I can be triggered, this is the best way I can be in relationships, this is what I want from relationships, this is what I want from life, and just give you the best that you can get out of life possible. And I think that's what psychology does. And I've always been interested in how people function, their behavior, how the brain functions, how that influences your behavior. So I do think the profession really did call me.
That's nice. Like, I've never heard anyone say the profession of psychology called them. It's usually, we usually find it in other professions, but that's awesome. And talking about autopilot, I think I've been running on flight mode for a lot of years. And I think that's because as a teenager and getting out of teenagehood into your early adult life, I never believed in psychology. I never did, and I think the problem is I knew there was a problem. I just didn't want to face it. And I think that's one of the reasons why we have you here. There are a lot of things that we're just bypassing in our lives, and we put them behind our ears and we just move and we're like, I'll be fine, And usually they say these things are for white people, and I do not like that statement. I feel like also as Blacks, there are a lot of things we go through, and we must learn how to manage ourselves. We must know how our behaviors, are, and how what you said they add into our lives. So you were called, all right? And how long have you been doing this?
A couple of months, actually. So in order to become a psychologist, it's a 7-year training program.
Okay.
So I've just finished the 7 years of training, like at the beginning of the year. So now I am an independent clinical psychologist. Okay. So I've been registered for a couple of months now.
Okay. Clinical psychologist.
Yes, clinical psychologist.
Okay. That's beautiful. And just out of interest, are you the passion, is it for with older people or kids, or is it just an all-rounder? You just love an entire human mind and behavior, it doesn't have to do with age?
Well, my first interest is in early childhood development, because I think even now when I see an adult who comes into my room, a lot of the therapy that you'll be doing and a lot of the interventions you'll be doing aren't things that just happened now. It's not, 2 years ago this happened. A lot of them, it's things like when I was 5, my mom said this, or when I was 7, my dad disappointed me in this way. So I think early childhood development is a huge interest of mine, because I realized how pivotal our childhood is in defining the rest of our lives. There's a famous quote by one of the pioneers of psychology where he says that the child is the father to the adult. And I think it's very important. A lot of who we are now is because of the many experiences that have shaped us. And the bulk of that is in childhood, because that's the time when we're most impressionable. So I think that's my most, my primary interest, but I am very interested also in the brain and how that works as well.
I never used to like being asked when I would see someone who wasn't a psychologist, but who was in the field of helping, your life orientation teachers that usually put them in school to be the therapists for the children. And each time they'd ask, how was your childhood? How were you growing up? What are the things that happened? How was your relationship with your parents? And I asked myself, what does that have to do with how I am now? And only now I'm realizing that actually when I sit down and think about my problems now, it's things that I take out from when I was a child, broken promises, your father not being around, and all of those things. And I think, the important part of all of this right now that I'd like to find out is, how do you cope with a patient that's in trauma? So I'd come into your space and your office, and I'm really going through so much, right? But you need to keep a professional balance. I don't know. So I used to think to myself, I can't be a psychologist because I'm too emotional. So I think to myself, you come in here and you might even lie to me, and I'd be like, oh my gosh, they're crying, and I cry with them. So how do you keep the balance of your professionalism and yourself? I don't know if I'm making sense. How do you keep yourself in check and intact in order to serve at your best people that have trauma or that are traumatized in your office space?
It's a skill. So you train for 7 years because you are acquiring a skill. The skill that allows you to sit with a patient or a client and work with whatever they're bringing and not take it personally or not carry it home. But it does take a lot of time to learn. I think as novice therapists, there's a lot of places where I still carry someone home with me. So I'll see a particular child, for example, or even an adult who has been through a lot, and I will dream about them, I'll think about them at home. So I think I can't separate the fact that I'm human first. And some things also resonate with me. If someone has a particular problem that might trigger something that has happened to me, I allow that to happen as well. But the one thing that you always remind yourself of is that it's a job, like any other job. I'm not this person's friend. I'm not their mother. If it's a child as well who doesn't have a mother figure, I am a therapist and I'm there to provide a particular skill. So you keep it boundaried in that sense, using the skills that I've acquired in my training.
And how do you keep sane after that? So I think I've seen a lot of self-care, self-love, get to know yourself, think about, your behavior. How do you personally? Because we usually think, our perspective is that you're a psychologist, so you must be able to psychoanalyze yourself and solve your problems. We don't expect you to have problems because you're a therapist. How do you keep sane in all of it?
Well, that's a very strange question to ask me now as well. But I think I go to my own therapy as well. I try to keep firm with regards to my boundaries, my own coping skills, trying to reach out for help, even though it's hard sometimes, trying to reach out for help with my support system, but also just debriefing with my colleagues, because we all go through the same things. We see the same patients. So in the staff room, there's a lot of space as well to just talk. Like, I just saw a very heavy case. And I just want to talk about it with someone as well. Okay. So I think it's just that sense of knowing that you're not alone as well, and that you're in a community where you're not supposed to be carrying all of it by yourself, but that you can talk to it about anyone as well, or with anyone.
So it's important for you as a therapist, as a psychologist, to have a support system too.
Definitely.
It gets heavy. It gets
Definitely.
hard.
People are cruel to each other. And I think there's certain things you don't see until you're working there. And life happens to all of us. And to some people, it happens more harshly. And it might even happen more harshly because they don't have an adequate support system. But life happens to all of us. We all feel the same emotions. We all lose people, all lose ideas. Things don't work out the way we want them to. We've all been traumatized in one way or another, especially in South Africa. Our crime rates, I mean, really. Even just looking at the number of like rape statistics as well, like the likelihood of certain things happening, we can't negate that. So I think life happens to all of us, and it can crush you, honestly, and there's certain things that you might never be able to recover from. So therapy and psychology is a great tool to just help you manage. I think as a mom, if you've seen your kids murdered in front of you, that's something you honestly will never recover from. There will never be a day where you wake up and are just okay. You always think about that, and you'll always carry that. But what therapy helps then is just helping you manage, so that you're not dysfunctional, and you still have some hope to continue as well.
Sure, some hope.
Yeah.
At least a bit of it. And with this managing that you're talking about, what are the few techniques that you can give to our viewers? So whether or not they want to see a psychologist, or whether they've seen one, but from your technique of being a of being a psychologist, what are the techniques that you can give? Some say journaling, some say listen to music, do things that you love, play sport. What has been, or what do you think is the most beneficial, obviously in your field or your line of being a psychologist? What are the few techniques that you can give?
Okay, so I am a huge advocate for journaling.
Okay.
I think I have had a number of friends who have come to me personally and said that they have seen a psychologist and they thought it was ineffective.
Okay.
But I am a huge advocate for journaling. That's why I started my business as well. Okay. Because I realized that to a certain extent, we can't just use one modality to help everyone. There's certain things that might help other people, and there's certain things that might not. I've seen even in my own therapy where a patient would not be able to verbalize something, but they'd rather write it down or come back to me and say, rather read this, but I can't say it out loud. And I think we also negate how awkward it is to say certain things. It's awkward to say I was raped. It's awkward to say I feel ugly. It's very awkward to say those things, but sometimes writing it down decreases the intensity and also just the anxiety of expressing certain things. So I'm a huge advocate for journaling, and that's why I started my business. For that reason, but also to increase my reach. So I have a lot of people on Instagram, on Facebook who reach out to me and ask for help, but I can't help everyone. And the number of mental health resources that are free are very scarce. So I think for me, this was my way of saying, okay, let's just empower people with a tool that they can use in the meantime. If they are waiting for 6 months to be seen by a psychologist at a public hospital, then they can still have this tool to help them to just journal, to still be able to process their thoughts and be able to feed back into them becoming the person that they are hoping to become.
And what is this business that you're talking about?
So I started... I started a business called Journal Q. So I've been publishing journals. So these are like notebooks with exercises, certain questions, and activities that a person can do to help them think and process different things that have happened. So I have one for general just looking at your existence. I think this year generally has been the one year where a lot of people have been forced to sit down and look at themselves. And a lot of people have then seen that actually, I think there are some things that aren't well with me. So this is just a journal that explores that. It explores your existence, what makes you a human, what do you prioritize, how can you best become the person that you're going to be with the things that have happened this year. So integrating 2020 into the next step, because it hasn't been what a lot of people have expected. But I am launching two new journals this month. So one for children, just to help with children to develop the emotional vocabulary as well. It's something we don't learn at school, and I think some parents struggle with it as well. Like 1 minute your child is trying to build blocks, and then they're frustrated because one block doesn't fit the way they want. Next thing they're throwing the whole box down. Next thing they're throwing themselves on the floor for 15 minutes and they don't know what they're feeling. So what this journal then is for them to know that there are certain things like, I feel left out if my friends don't want to play with me in the playground, or I feel jealous because that person got that birthday party but I didn't. So it's that journal is for children from like 8 to 12. And then I have another journal for anxiety. I know a number of people have come to me this year particularly saying they've been having struggles with like sleeping. There's a lot of uncertainties because some people have been told that their companies are retrenching, and that's been ongoing. The retrenchments don't just happen for a month. They've been ongoing. So a lot of people don't know what the future looks like, and it's been a very unsettling year. So that journal is for anxiety. So it uses cognitive behavioral therapy techniques, which is like the gold standard for alleviating anxiety. And it has exercises and just reflective tasks that a person can do every day to help them with their own anxiety.
I think I need to get that. There's been a lot of uncertainty.
Definitely.
And
I think everyone
unsettling. I think I need to get that. Sure, man, I don't know. I feel like we can never cover everything about mental health, you know? And I think what I've realized also is that we usually want big things to happen for me to think, okay, I'm not okay. I'm not fine. I'm depressed. And from my own experience, I've realized that it's actually the small things that happen that build up and become, you know, something big. So what's the advice you can give to our viewers? I mean, when I was young, or when I went through all of the things that I went through, the experiences I had in my teenage years, I'd say to people, I actually don't want to talk about it because I feel like it's nothing, you know. People are being raped outside there. People's parents don't have jobs, you know. People are not going to school, you know. I'm at school, I have uniform, I can eat, you know, all of these things. So I don't think my problems are that much of a massive thing to, you know, to cry about. But I've realized that because I kept quiet about it and I kept on prolonging the process of actually healing, it's become one big ball of misery. So what advice can you give to those who are watching, who are probably thinking, you know what, my friend is going through a bigger thing than I am, so I'm not going to talk about this, or I'm too afraid to talk, I don't want to be judged, you know. I don't know what people need to think. They need to get into their feelings and actually try and take the first step to solving the problem, although it won't happen instantly, but at least the first step really matters. So what's the advice that you can give?
I think it's important to understand that emotions happen on like a spectrum. It's like a continuum. So something like sadness. On the one side, there's just sadness that you would feel if you lost your phone, or something just minor maybe happened. And then on the other side of the spectrum is depression. We can all exist at different levels, at different intensities on that. Even with anxiety, there's just fear of, oh, I'm about to do a speech in front of my class, I'm a bit anxious. And then on the other side of the spectrum is full blown, I can't leave my house, I have heart palpitations, I'm having a panic attack sort of anxiety. So I think it's very important to realize that it happens like that. It's never just either one or the other. We're all existing somewhere along the line. And because of life's triggers, you can either be tilted towards one side or towards the other side, depending on your own coping skills and your support system, and just generally your robustness as an individual, your resilience. So I think it's very important to be easy on ourselves, that sometimes things happen and you might shift to this side. And I always have a problem with the idea of comparing ourselves or relativism. So saying that, like, we both got raped, I got over it, you didn't. Like, what's the...
Why are you not getting over it?
You are weaker and I'm stronger. And it's not like that. I think it all exists on a continuum. And if sometimes life tilts you a bit this side, it's just easier. I think it's comforting and something that people should know, that you can always go back to the more normal side. But I think just because someone else got over something that you went through, or someone else has it worse, does not invalidate the mere fact that you are feeling unworthy and you are feeling sad. And I think it's about that as well, just being aware of the internal dialogues that we have, and being able to take care of yourself uniquely, because our experiences aren't the same. Some people do grow after trauma, some people just fall apart after the same traumas. So it's very important to understand that there are certain things that can help you, like I've said, your coping skills, your support system, empowering yourself in a way, remembering to do things that you enjoy doing. Like even with what I started with the journaling, that's something I recommend to people when they come to me and they're feeling anxious about pressure that's being put on them by their parents. They don't know what to do. They don't know their purpose in life and whatever. Just start writing down. Have some guided ways of reflecting and thinking about things to just help you. And if you do find yourself tilting more to the more dysfunctional side, always know that you are able to go to that side as well. And the same way that experiences helped you become the person that you are is the same way that experiences will shape you to become the person that you want to be. So that self-acceptance won't just come like this. The same way you doubting yourself didn't just come like this. Experiences made you that way, and experiences can make you the person that you want to be. And this time around, you're not a child, so you have the choice to choose what kind of experiences you allow and permit to shape you.
I'm actually glad you spoke about that experiences before we close it off. So you spoke about internal dialogue, right? And now you spoke about experiences. There's an article I read, can't remember if it's a blog, I think it was a blog. A lady, right, was in a relationship, and then things happened in that relationship and she felt like she was used, right? So I guess then her internal dialogue was, I'm so worthless. You know, you played me after I did this and fought for you and whatever. And then she goes and she sleeps with 2 married men. So in her head, because she was getting that attention from these married men, in her head she's thinking, so what? You know, so there's that battle that she was in, emotionally and mentally. There's this thing that people like saying, or rather that I've heard quite a lot, that says, but you put yourself in that situation.
Okay.
Right? So I don't think people, I don't know if it's trying to, because some people say don't nurse their emotions. You know, when someone said, I'm going to kill myself, then they're like, okay, go ahead. We can't nurse your feelings. So with this particular lady, she felt like she was used. You know, she felt like she fought for the relationship and all of that. And now, because of not understanding where she was and not dialoguing with herself, internal dialoguing or monologuing, she then gave herself to the married men. And now going for therapy, she was trying to blame it on what had happened. But what was actually eating her up was the fact that she went and she had extramural activities, I call them, with the 2 married men. What advice can you give, or what can we do to, I don't know if you could talk to that girl, maybe there's someone who's watching who is like that, or talk about the fact that you can't say someone put themselves in that situation. or is there something like that?
Well, they're also different personalities.
Yeah.
So when I'm thinking about this lady, in a sense, you could say that some people do put themselves in certain situations, but not consciously, right? So if you have learned a certain way of thinking about yourself, it is easy for you to always find yourself with a friend who is abusive or manipulative. Always find yourself in relationships that are like that. So there is a sense that because of our own personalities, there are certain systems and environments that we will always find ourselves in because of who we are and what we attract, right? So there is that sense. And I think even from what you're describing, that this lady then didn't go into a reflective state, but rather went into just a reactive stage. So for her to try to cope with the rejection that she had felt, her aim then was, okay, let me just give myself to someone else and get attention somewhere else instead of dealing with the rejection that she had felt. So I think it's also about that when experiences happen, take time to pause. Life is very fast, and I think life moves very fast. We are never given really the time to process things. If you get mugged today, tomorrow you have to be back at work, and it's just that fast. But I think it's also important to give yourself time to process it so that you don't end up misaligning or mixing up things, right, and expounding things. So here was this experience. She felt rejected by one particular man. She should have then sat down with herself and thought, okay, how can I differentiate what is his stuff and what is mine? What did I bring? Did I bring my own insecurities? What did he bring? Did he bring his own narcissism? Did he bring his own trauma as well? And then separate from the two and realize that, okay, this is what I need to work on, and then move on from that. So for her, she was just avoiding that rejection and trying to fill that void by getting attention somewhere else to prove to herself that she can still get validation from men. She can still get attention from men. But then that can blow up in your face because now you feel guilty that I was part of maybe breaking up someone else's marriage or someone else's beautiful
or feeling
thing.
more worthless.
Exactly. So I think it's important to always pause. The world won't give you that time. That's the one thing that you should know. You should give yourself that time, that I'm not okay. Listen to your body, listen to your mind, your spirit. When it says to you that you're not okay, take time, sit down on the grandstands and just watch things and think. Because then you don't want to be caught in the rat race of trying to fill a void or avoiding something else and then making it worse. Because it's a vicious cycle. I think even if people are depressed, then you start drinking. Then you feel guilty that you drink so much. Then you feel even more depressed, and then you drink even more so it's just that vicious cycle that you need to step away from.
Wow. Okay. One last thing. I don't know if I'll have more questions, but one last thing. You were off social media for a couple of, was it weeks?
Look at that.
I'm not going to ask you why, but you're talking about time off. I know social media has affected a lot of people and still affects a lot of people. They compare themselves to others in their lives and, I don't have this, what they acquire. Give us just something very small, the importance of taking time off social media and the benefits it has, the taking time off and the benefits it has on your mental state, your mental health.
Literally, if you Google how to rest, every article that you will read will have take time off social media. I think social media requires you to be in a certain mental state because it can be more draining than it can be energizing. So it's a great platform to connect with people, to know people, but I think if you're not in a great mental space, it can honestly drain you because then you are sitting there thinking, oh my gosh, that person has friends, that person is in a relationship, I'm single, they got just got engaged and we're the same age, or she just bought a car and we're the same age. So I think if you're not in the proper mental space, it's very important to just take away from that, because social media has a lot of voices. And if your own voice isn't solid, then it will be easy to get swallowed up by all of those things. And I think it's a very important way of resting, because it is draining, just looking at your screen, scrolling, getting all of this information overload.
Counting your number of likes and comments.
Going back to who viewed your statuses. No, so I
all go through it.
So I think that rat race, definitely if you want to rest, you can incorporate it somehow, whether it's you don't go on social media at certain times of the evening, maybe before you sleep, make sure you don't go on it, or let it not be the first thing you see when you wake up, but just protect yourself somehow. And if you know for sure that you are not okay, maybe you're anxious or feeling depressed, then take some time off. And don't feel the need to explain yourself as well. Just take time off so that you don't feel more drained in the future.
I hope you've learned a lot from watching this video, and I hope you'll be able to manage or to better manage your behavior, your emotions, and I hope you'll be able to sit down and think more about your life and your life choices. For more information on what clinical psychologist Asanda Madi shared, you can go to our website, which is thequestwithasa.com. Again, I'll say it, it's thequestwithasa.com, and go and have fun. I hope you enjoyed. Thank you for watching.